Undercard podcast, hashtag 2A. Gaethje versus Poirier. Alright, so, let's talk about this. We got Justin Gaethje coming off of a big loss, a big knockout versus Eddie Alvarez, who's probably the most underrated lightweight of all time.
Yeah, I definitely would say he's at least top 10 of all time, if not top 5.
I was going to say, I would put him top 5. Honestly, I think he's better than BJ Penn. BJ Penn was a freak athlete in a time when nobody really knew anything but one art, and he was doing two things.
Yeah, but you got to look the way BJ was smashing guys back in the day. Look at the Joe Stevenson fight, Sean Shirk, Diego Sanchez.
That period of about 2 years, he was definitely the. But then again, look at the guys that Alvarez has had to fight and went to war with. I mean,
Chandler, Poirier,
the guys that he fought in fucking Japan. Katsunori Kikuta almost broke his neck.
He's beaten some really tough guys. He beat Pitbull. He beat Roger Huerta.
He beat Roger Huerta. Yeah,
a lot of people forget about that.
And he beat him pretty decisively. That was a pretty good win. Well, let's talk about this. Gaethje got knocked out in his last fight. Do you think his chin's cracked, or was that a cardio knockout?
No, I don't think. I think a lot of people underestimate how hard Eddie can crack, and I don't think his chin is done because up until the point of that knee, Gaethje really wasn't hurt. And
he didn't get hurt at all.
He didn't get hurt at all. Those body shots were kind of bothering a little bit, but you never really saw him in trouble.
See, that's what I think what happened was Eddie did such a good job of mixing in those body shots in the middle of the combinations. It was clearly bothering Gaethje. I think he'd hit him with a few knees to the body, and then Gaethje kind of ducked in and ate it, and he was so exhausted there was no getting back up.
No. And you heard Gaethje talk before he even got into the UFC that he was going to knock a lot of people out, but he was going to get knocked out.
He was going to get knocked out, and that's absolutely true. And it wasn't a bad knockout loss. It wasn't.
No.
It wasn't Overeem getting his head Pez dispensered by Ngannou.
Barboza Dariush.
Oh, yeah,
Dariush looks like he's still being affected from it.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't one of those knockouts where it looks like that guy's affected permanently. No. But it's hard to say. I mean, you never know what's gonna happen when a guy takes his first knockout loss and comes back. Yeah. And some guys are terrified and can't fight anymore. Look at when Tito got knocked out.
I don't see Gaethje being like that, though.
It doesn't seem likely.
I will admit that I wish he would take a little bit more time off because that knockout was in December. Late December. So
late December.
4 or 5 months.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that wants to just keep getting back in, but he should have taken a solid 6 months off of sparring before he's one of those guys that spars full force.
Yeah, he does.
Donald Cerrone's the same way.
And you've seen how that's affected Cerrone right now.
Yep, absolutely. When you get into that, mindset, I'm just going to keep fighting and keep fighting. I mean, eventually your body's going to break down, no matter how good of an athlete you are.
No, and I think Gaethje, a reason why I wish he would have taken more time off is because he's got a hell of a task in front of him.
Yeah, this is a big fight.
In a couple of weeks. Poirier is dangerous.
Poirier's the real deal. Poirier, even coming back up from 45, I mean, his power, his boxing skill, his defense, everything has gotten better. But this is one thing I do want to ask about Poirier. Is he still able to be easily drawn into a brawl? Because early in his career, he was a brawler. And he went to ATT and he's really worked on his boxing, his head movement, his defense, his jab. But he could still be drawn out into a firefight.
I think he can be. You have seen before, like you said, when he came to the UFC, he was predominantly a brawler, and you've seen as he continues his career in the UFC, it's happening less and less. But when it happens, it happens.
It really happens. And he doesn't get back out of it. He flips the switch, and that switch is broken.
And it's happened a few times at lightweight. It happened against Jim Miller.
Yep.
It happened a couple of times against Pettis. It happened against Alvarez. And I think if anyone's going to drag him into a firefight like that, it's Justin Gaethje.
And Gaethje, that's what Gaethje wants, is to get them fighting dirty. Because as soon as they're both throwing, that's when Gaethje's going to catch him with something.
Those leg kicks. Poirier is going to try to circle away from the big power shot of Gaethje. He's going to circle to his right. Gaethje has got a ridiculously powerful left leg kick. Yep. He's going to be working that on
both of his leg kicks are really good, and if they tie up at all, he's really good on the inside with the leg kicks.
His knees and his dirty boxing is ridiculous. You saw that in the Michael Johnson fight.
Yeah, the Johnson fight, and I think the Johnson fight's going to be probably the biggest, the best kind of precursor to this fight just because Johnson's a southpaw. Mm-hmm. Johnson's a boxer that could get drawn into brawls. Johnson likes to try to wrestle, but when you take his wrestling away, he becomes really one note. And that's one of the things with with Poirier, is Poirier's gotten a lot better with his wrestling and mixing it in and making guys respect it. Mm-hmm. And when they're respecting his wrestling, his hands come a lot better because he can kind of combo in and out of it. But does he have good enough takedowns to keep Gaethje honest?
I think he does. You gotta look at some of his fights at featherweight. He took down Cub Swanson, which is not an easy thing to do.
Cub is a hard guy to take
he
down.
Is.
His counter takedowns are crazy.
He smashed Joe Duffy on the ground.
Yep.
And a lot of people forget about his jiu-jitsu. He tapped out Max Holloway.
He did. He did tap out Max Holloway. Early in Holloway's career, but he did tap him out.
He did tap him out. And who else did he tap out? A really good jiu-jitsu guy. Jonathan Brookins. I think he tapped him out with an anaconda choke.
Yep. He caught him kind of coming forward.
Yeah,
snapped him down after a hard body punch.
Not an easy guy to finish. Not an easy guy to finish. Especially back then. I think up until that point, he got finished by Aldo in the WEC.
Yep.
And then I
finished
think
with the body shot.
Charles Oliveira tapped him out.
Charles Oliveira tapped him out with a rear naked choke, was it? Or was it?
I think it was another anaconda.
Was it an anaconda? Yeah, he was definitely open to the front headlock chokes because of his length. But yeah. That Darce choke was in tight.
He's got a very good Darce choke.
His Darce choke is good. I will say that I think if he had a better front headlock, he'd be able to move into more things from that. But his Darce choke, he just snaps it right in, and that's the end of it. Mm-hmm. But Gaethje's not really like a big shoot in and leave his head open guy. Like, he's going to try to take you down from the clinch if he takes you down. Mm-hmm. But his takedown defense is solid.
He's a very good wrestler.
Great wrestler.
Was he an All-American wrestler?
He was an All-American at a 1AA school wrestling in 1A. So I mean, he was a really high level wrestler for where he was at, and has not really lost that. He's had a lot of guys trying to throw down with him, and he keeps a hold of him and keeps moving.
You did see Michael Johnson take him down in his debut, but that was after Johnson cracked him with that right hook.
Yeah, Johnson hammered him and took him down, and he was up pretty quick.
Oh, he was up pretty quick.
I mean, he bounced right back up. There was no, you almost can't even score the takedown off that. You can only really score the punch.
Yeah. But I think Gaethje recovers really well from a shot.
He does.
I think if he doesn't go down for the count, I think he's going to recover. And but I like the fact that he's fighting a southpaw against Poirier, because that lead left kick is really, really, really hard.
And that inside leg kick when he kicks across. Because he caught Johnson out of position a couple times with it.
But Johnson caught him off the counter with that, too.
He did, and I think having caught that from a guy like Johnson was going to make him a little bit more wary, because he was a lot better about putting his hands up against Alvarez after the leg kicks.
Yeah, well, the thing... Poirier is probably going to have an advantage being a southpaw with that liver kick, that rear liver kick to the body.
But does he throw it enough?
I think he will. I think he sees the body shots that Eddie landed, and he thinks with that defense that he has, that real high guard, how tall he stands, he's gonna have some success with it. And you saw Michael Johnson actually have some success.
He did have some success with that
left hand of the body.
Okay, so let's think about this. Alvarez really did a lot of good work to the body with his hands, but Alvarez is a lot shorter. Poirier is a little bit tall. I think Poirier might even be taller than... I
think he's only 5'9".
Is he only 5'9"?
I think they're both 5'9".
Are they both the same height? 5'11" is Gaethje. And...
I think Gaethje might be taller, but
5'9"
Poirier might have a reach advantage on him.
Poirier's got a reach advantage, but think about this. Gaethje was so much shorter when he was hitting the body, his head wasn't open. His head wasn't wide open to the punches. Poirier is a little bit... Because he's so long and he wants to fight on the outside, he's going to have a little bit more open to his... his head's going to be more open when he goes to the body. Is that going to play an effect? Is that going to play a part with Gaethje countering the body shots? Because if Poirier decides not to kick and actually box into body shots like Alvarez was doing, maybe he leaves his head open for a lot more counts.
I think
because that's not really his thing. He doesn't. He's a headhunter.
Yeah. I think Gaethje is going to find the counter, honestly. He found the counter a few times against Johnson when he had him tired. He was throwing, hit him with some uppercuts and some hooks. And I don't think Poirier is super defensively sound. We're watching his fight with Eddie Alvarez right now, and they're trying to kill each other.
Yeah, they're murdering each other.
And this is an example of how it's not hard to get Poirier into a brawl.
Yeah, once he thinks he's got you hurt and he starts coming forward, he's not going to stop.
No.
And as we're watching, we're seeing them throw punches, and Alvarez is mixing punches to the body, and it's really bringing Poirier's hands down and leaving him open to punches up top. So I just wonder if how long it's going to take before Poirier thinks he's got an advantage, comes in for the kill, Gaethje starts pummeling him. And that's another thing, too, with Poirier, is he's not really that good of a leg kick checker.
No, he's not.
Gaethje is really good at mixing those in at unexpected moments.
Oh, he is. He throws it at the end of every single combo, and his hands are always in your face.
His hands are always good. He's pushing on your head, kind of off-balancing you into them. He kicks to the inside of the calf. He kicks in awkward places. And he's finished a couple guys with that. I mean, he finished Luis Palomino.
He finished Brian Foster, too.
Brian Foster with it? Yeah, I mean, he finished quite a few guys with that.
Brian Foster's a tough dude.
Stone tough.
Oh, yeah.
And finished him with that. So that's, I just wonder how that's going to be, how that's going to play out if he's throwing a lot of crazy punches. Poirier's looking good, box. He hits him. Maybe he thinks he's hurt. Maybe he doesn't. And he decides to swarm. And Gaethje starts throwing bombs with him. Who's gonna come out on top of that? I think Gaethje.
I think it was Palomino that he fought. One of the fights with Palomino when Palomino was teeing off on him, and Gaethje was doing that real high guard that he does, and he just cracked him with a left hook or a right hook, excuse me.
Yeah, it was a right hook.
Floored him.
He ate the punch and hit him right after and floored him, and that was the end of the fight.
And he's deceptively fast too. He's really athletic.
On the inside, he's really fast, and even when he's tired, he doesn't really slow down because he's going the same pace the entire fight.
He can crack. He can put dudes out with one punch.
He's got some power, yeah. He's not necessarily the greatest at feinting and setting it up, but when he hits you, it hurts.
I think he's technically sound, but he's technically sound in his own way.
Absolutely, he's built his own style, and Trevor Whitman's done a really good job of working with him, keeping him as balanced and as defensive as he can be, while still throwing crazy punches and still being ready to really put it on people. And he does a really good job with that. I mean, it's not like you could look at his style and say that's the reason he's lost. He's only lost a one fight.
He's only lost one fight, and it was against one of the greatest lightweights.
One of the best lightweights ever. And that fight was back and forth. I think, from the score, when I was watching it, I scored it for Gaethje the first two rounds.
I think Gaethje probably had round one with the leg kicks and was really hurting there. I think Alvarez found his rhythm in round 2 and 3. But you heard in his post-fight interview that he only had a couple more of those leg kicks in him, and then he was done.
He was done, yeah.
He landed a lot of them. And Eddie's never really been good at checking those. You saw that in the Cerrone fight.
That's because he likes to use his head movement so much. He's a lot like Robbie Lawler. Those legs are open to be hit.
Yeah, and I think a rematch might go differently, honestly.
I agree 100%. I think that as far as a loss, you can't really call it a prospect loss because he's one of the best lightweights in the world against one of the best lightweights in the world. But you could call it, as a first loss, the best kind of loss you can have because he wasn't just wiped out.
No, he wasn't.
They were back and forth with a guy that just lost his belt to one of the best fighters ever.
It could have been worse. I mean, you look at Aaron Pico's debut when he got choked out. I think it was Zach Freeman.
Zach Freeman, who was a journeyman, a good journeyman, but a journeyman.
He got nailed with an uppercut and then choked out in less than 30 seconds.
Yep. Overconfident. That was the thing. Gaethje's got a lot of confidence, but he's smart with it. He's smart about how he fights. He's got his own style. He works in, and he knows. If you watch the season of The Ultimate Fighter leading up to that, he mentions repeatedly, like, I'm going to go out. Like, eventually I'm going to have to retire, and I'm going to get my ass beat in the process of
Absolutely. I just don't think that he's on the downward slide just yet. We're going to see when he fights Poirier what kind of damage he's really taken from that Eddie fight and from the Johnson fight and from pretty much every other fight he's had because he always fights like that.
He always fights like that, and he always comes back from the knockdowns and from the hard punches really well. So if he can absorb those punches and keep coming back like that, I think this is his fight to lose.
He has very little regard for his own safety, and that's what's made him such a fan favorite. But once you get to the upper echelon of the division, especially at 155, when you're fighting guys like Conor and Tony and Khabib, that style doesn't really cut it anymore. That's true. You kind of look at John Lineker as an example of that. That he was out at 35 just smashing people, and then he bumped into TJ.
See, I think I got to disagree with you a little bit. I think the pressure style is probably the best kind of style for 55 because if you look at the run that Rafael dos Anjos went on, they don't have the same style, but they're very come forward, throw a lot of punches, mix in some takedowns, a lot of kicks, and I think that the guys, the super athletes. Because as much of an athlete as Gaethje is, he's not super fast.
No.
He's deceptively fast.
He's not
He's not insanely explosive. He's deceptively explosive.
He's not like Michael Johnson.
Exactly. And those kind of guys that are super fast, super athletic, they kind of get by on it. When the time comes and you put pressure on them, if they can't make you go away, they break.
And you saw that when Johnson fight.
We saw it with the Johnson fight, and we almost, like Eddie said, we almost saw it with the Eddie fight. And Eddie's, tough as a 2-day-old steak. I mean, I just think that style is really, really well built for the top level, but you're going to take some losses along the way.
Absolutely.
That's just the way it is.
Absolutely, and I think the Dos Anjos example, I do agree with you that the pressure fighting did really help him, and he beat a lot of really tough guys on his way to the belt.
He really did.
Benson Henderson, he beat the
he knocked out Ben Henderson, which I think was the first time.
He beat the tar out of Nate Diaz.
Oh man, he annihilated him in that title fight. It was insane.
But I think Dos Anjos was a little more defensively sound than Gagey.
I agree 100%. I think he's better at knowing when to step back, but I don't think he's as good of a clinch fighter. As good of a clinch fighter as he is, I think Gaethje was a better one.
I think Gaethje is a better one,
because Gaethje's better at mixing in the strikes and the takedowns.
I agree.
Okay, so let's take a look forward. Gaethje wins. Who do we have him fighting next?
I think who does he fight next? Someone I would like to see him fight. I'd like to see him have a rematch with Eddie Alvarez, or have him fight the winner of Edson Barboza and Kevin Lee.
Good fight.
Especially if Barboza wins, because that's a battle between two of the best leg kickers ever.
Yep. And Barboza's one of those guys that is open to leg kicks and is pretty open to pressure. You can pressure him and you can get in his head. Absolutely.
Or you could have him fight Michael Chiesa if he beats Anthony Pettis. That's a big if.
That's a big if. Okay, so and then Poirier. Who do you want Poirier to fight if he wins?
If Poirier beats him, I think he's done enough to earn a title shot. I think he gets the winner of Khabib Holloway. I think you got to give it to him. He beat some really tough guys at 155. He beat Bobby Green, Joe Duffy. He had that hiccup against Michael Johnson, but you look at that fight and he got clipped. But I think it was more of him getting caught.
I think he got caught,
and I think he was winning against Eddie Alvarez before that illegal knee. And
that was a close fight, but yeah, I would agree with that.
You saw him beat Jim Miller. You saw him beat Anthony Pettis. And if he beats Gaethje, he's got to be up there.
He's got to be up there. I think whoever wins this fight needs to take a rematch with Eddie for a title eliminator. That's the best fight for the fans, and I think... Because realistically, because Conor's coming back and fighting for the belt.
I don't think he is. I don't think he's coming back.
If he comes back, he's fighting for the belt, and I think he does, just because I think he's going to need money sooner or later.
I think he'll come back and fight for the belt if Max wins. I don't think he wants any part of Khabib.
I don't think that's true. I think he'd rather fight Khabib because I think that's a bigger money fight. If they go to Russia, he fights Khabib for the belt in Russia. And all the Irish fans show up. That's a money fight. That's a money fight and a half.
He's so scary, though.
He is scary, but I think he's open. He's open, especially early in the fights.
He did get clipped by Michael Johnson.
Not a great striker. Not very defensively sound with his hands.
I think he's tightened it up a little bit. I think
that last fight he didn't look tight at all. When he fought Barboza was clipping him.
I think his striking is better than what people give him credit for. I don't think he would have done very well against Tony on the feet.
No, not at all.
Tony's so slick, and he is so dynamic and versatile with the strikes between his punches, elbows, kicks, everything.
And that front headlock. I think those front headlock chokes.
Not to mention he's long.
And crazy long. Yeah, he could have kept him at distance, but I don't know. It's a lot of speculation here. One last quick question about Poirier. Is he chinny?
I don't think he's chinny. I think he might not be as defensively sound as he could be, because Eddie can crack. Eddie did knock him out, but it was with an illegal knee.
Yeah.
He got knocked out by Conor, but that's
Conor.
He was fighting Conor, and he was fighting at 45.
At 45, which he was depleting himself pretty dramatically. You can definitely see a big difference in his body.
And then he got clipped by Michael Johnson, but you take a look at that knockout. Michael Johnson hits anyone the way that he hit Poirier.
He hit him pretty flush.
They're going out. And that left hand that he hit him with, and then that right hand on the way down that he dove in on, that was nasty.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
That was nasty. But I don't think he's chinny, but I think that if he's going to be defensively sound, it needs to be against a guy like Gaethje.
Yeah, this is the fight that he needs to have all of his ducks in a row.
Gaethje's going to go looking for a knockout.
That's one thing, too. As far as high-level wear and tear from fighting the best in the world, Gaethje's only been in the UFC for 2 fights. Mm-hmm. And when he was fighting in World Series of Fighting, let's be honest, a lot of those guys weren't that good.
No, not as good as the UFC.
Not as good as the guys even just now, he's already fought more great fighters than he ever fought before. Poirier's been fighting the best in the world for what, 6 years?
For a long
time. When, because again, Poirier is probably more of an athlete than Gaethje is.
Mm-hmm.
When does he fall off the cliff? Do you think?
When is Poirier or Gaethje?
Poirier.
Well,
because Gaethje's, I think, is going to be damage.
Yeah.
Poirier, I think, is going to have a steep drop off just because of the amount of wear and tear overall from fucking years and years of 45 and 55. He's never taken an easy fight.
He's fought some tough dudes.
Never once taken an easy fight.
He fought Josh Grisby when Josh Grisby was going to fight for the title.
Grisby was supposed to be the number one guy, and he took him on last minute and beat his ass.
He fought Holloway. He fought the Korean Zombie, Cub Swanson, Eric Koch. He beat a lot
Yancy
of...
Medeiros, Joe Duffy, Bobby Green, Jim Miller.
He's fought some tough guys, and he's had some wars. And I think it's...
Pablo Garza.
That's another guy who's underrated.
Yep.
But,
and he was fighting in the WEC before that, and he fought Zach McElwright, who's a decent fighter, lost to Danny Castillo, who's also a really good fighter.
He knocked out Diego Brandao.
He did knock out Diego Brandao, and that was a good fight. So, I mean, he's fought... Again, just at a high level. Mm-hmm. He's fought a lot of really, really good guys.
He really has.
I mean, there's got to be a time when he drops off, right?
Mm-hmm. And there are a couple guys in MMA that you see these people, and they are just cut from a different cloth. You see the Nogueiras, you see the Frankie Edgars, you see the big countries. I don't think that Dustin Poirier is one of those people.
I agree.
I think that his drop-off is probably to come quicker than those guys. I think
it has to just because he's a lighter weight guy. But on the other hand, he's at ATT, who's done such a good job with Robbie Lawler, keeping him healthy, getting him to the fights, having him prepared and conditioned and ready to go, but also not hurt as bad as he would have been had he been anywhere else. So I mean, if he's gonna have a drop off athletically, that's gonna impact his career. He's really picked the best place to have it at because they've got everything they need in house to keep him going and keep the duct tape on as long as he can go. Whereas Gaethje, I think when Gaethje falls off, it's going to fall off all of a sudden. It's going to be a Chuck Liddell fall off.
It is going to be a fall off like that because he, like I said earlier, he has got very little concern for his own safety.
He may have decent defense. He doesn't take as many flush punches as people think. But even the light punches will do you in if you take enough of them.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't a lot of guys that have that stand and bang style that are real successful. Liddell was like that, but that was old.
Back in the day.
John Lineker's like that now, and he's had some success at 135 aside from the TJ Dillashaw fight. Gaethje's another one of those guys. And I think if Gaethje just tightens up his defense a little bit, I think he can be world champion.
I agree 100%. If he can avoid... I think if he uses his feet to avoid punches, uses the angles, uses kind of the RDA long guard,
the dirty boxing,
keeps in with the dirty boxing, maybe more takedowns, some more grounded pound, body shots. I think he could extend his career and make a pretty decisive run at the title. He's only 2 wins away, I think, because if you look at the lightweight division, it's so up and down that all you need is 2 or 3 wins against really good people. And Gaethje again. Johnson, crazy knockout. Alvarez, fight of the fucking decade.
That was an awesome
If he beats
fight.
Poirier and then he goes on and beats anybody else, if he goes back and beats Alvarez, I mean, who else are they going to hold up and say, well, you got to go through this guy first?
Tony. He's the only guy.
Tony, maybe Kevin Lee and Khabib.
I don't think Kevin Lee's up there. I think Khabib, the winner of Khabib and Holloway is going to be the undisputed champion. They're stripping Conor.
They already stripped Tony.
They already stripped Tony, which I don't necessarily agree with.
I don't agree with it at all,
That's
but
another
whatever.
conversation. I think that Khabib's probably going to beat Max Holloway. I think that if Gaethje beats Poirier, he has to fight Alvarez again.
I agree.
He has to either fight Alvarez or Tony.
I agree.
To get to that number
to get the
one
title
spot.
shot.
And that all depends on how quickly Tony heals up from that knee injury, too.
I would bet that's probably not as bad as they make it out to be. It was just how fast it happened, how close to the fight it happened. But that's a good question. I mean, when Tony comes back, he's so movement based. As soon as he starts having knee injuries, when do they stop? Look at David Terrell. David Terrell, his career dropped off the face of the earth after he started having knee injuries. Shogun, Anderson had that back injury.
The only guy I can think of who's had a ton of knee surgeries that hasn't been affected as much as I thought was Dominic Cruz. Yep. And his style is so movement-based.
You would think he would never be able to come back, and he looks better now than he did.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I don't think he uses as much movement. I think he's smarter with it.
He came back from, 2 or 3 knee surgeries?
Yeah.
On both knees?
Yeah, they had to pull the tendon, the cadaver tendon out.
And he came back to win the title. Against a guy who's also really movement-based and super dangerous.
Outdanced him and outbeat him. Outbeat him and beat him in every aspect of the fight.
I think that's about as close as a fight as you can get, though.
Yeah, that's as close to perfection as you can get after a knee injury, and I don't think Tony's anywhere near the athlete Dominic Cruz was. And I don't think Tony's dedicated, but I think his dedication's more to the technique than the conditioning, and I think Dominic Cruz, the reason he was able to come back is because his conditioning is always on par.
Always
in the gym, always working his ass off.
Never shows up out of shape.
His weight is never an issue. He's always prehabbed. Other than the freak knee injuries that he's had, he's really probably one of the best prepared fighters you could possibly.
Absolutely.
And all the time he spent in the booth analyzing fights has only made him better.
Not to mention, he's training with some killers at Alliance.
Yep.
He's training with Phil Davis, Jeremy Stevens,
Alexander Gustafsson,
Justin Lawrence, who's fighting in Bellator, who's fighting here pretty soon, who's a super, super underrated fighter. That guy's striking.
He's definitely an up and comer.
He is, for sure.
Especially in Bellator. I mean, shit, he could be in a title shot in a year.
Oh, for sure. Well, he's fighting AJ McKee, and that's
a scary fight.
That's a fun fight.
If he gets through AJ McKee, I think they're going to have to put him in the discussion.
AJ McKee's dangerous.
Very dangerous.
Super dangerous. And I think that's probably a fight between two guys that are going to be title contenders. I think the winner of that fight might fight someone like, I don't know, Daniel Strauss, or maybe they'll go
Pat Curran. Maybe
they'll fight Pat Curran.
Maybe they'll fight Pat Curran 55.
I think he's 45.
45, yeah, okay. Well, somebody,
I think so.
Somebody like that. Somebody at that level. Somebody, yeah.
I think did he beat Joe Warren at 45?
Joe Warren's 55.
I thought he was fighting. His last fight was at 35. I think.
Was it? Oh,
I think so. He fought Baby Joe.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Fuck, I got it all mixed up. I haven't watched Bellator in so long.
Oh man, Bellator's got some great.
They really do, and they've got some great fights coming up.
Oh my God, Chandler Gertz.
That's going to be a good fight.
That's a really fun fight. Gertz shows up to bang, and so does Michael Chandler.
So does Chandler. And Chandler's got the wrestling in his back pocket. So if it ever comes down to it,
he can crack.
Come down, take him down, and knock him out on the ground.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
All right, so give me your pick. Picking around for Gaethje versus Poirier.
Gaethje Poirier. I'm thinking Gaethje's going to have a couple of scares, especially in the first 2 rounds. I think that Poirier is going to hurt him and put him in a lot of trouble and maybe take him down a few times, but I think Dustin might get tired, and that's not something you want to have happen against a guy like Gaethje. I think he's going to come back and work his leg kicks and the body shots and the dirty boxing in the knees, similar to what he did to Michael Johnson, and I'm thinking a 3rd round TKO for Gaethje.
I'm going with that 3rd or 4th round TKO Gaethje. I think it's going to be a little bit more dominant than we're thinking. I think Poirier is going to get drawn so easily into a brawl. Mm-hmm. That I think he's going to lose his head, and once you start that with Gaethje, you can't stop. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be 3rd or 4th round, and I think it's going to look bad. I think Poirier is going to show us his toughness, but I don't think he's going to show us much technically.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right.